On this amendment, Mr. Speaker. Many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, you have advantage having served as a distinguished governor of Kilifi for 10 years. There are many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, who are diabetic, who have pressure, who are unwell, who their properties have been auctioned, who their children and families are suffering, because their only mistake, Mr. Speaker, was to take a tender from a county government, do it with all their resources, but they were not being able to pay it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while I'm seized of the matter of petition E003 at Kitala High Court, Mr. Speaker, on the verification of pending bills, in the case of Trans Nzoia, Mr. Speaker, we agree that the issue of verification of pending bills, Mr. Speaker, is the domain of Office of the Auditor General that was restated in the matter that came before Kitala High Court, Mr. Speaker. Even my own civil litigation professor, Nixon Sifuna, in his ruling, as even out of desperation, Mr. Speaker, said, should you see a government vehicle, a county government vehicle, Mr. Speaker, he has advised that in that ruling that you cease an auction to recover your money, Mr. Speaker. I can imagine a situation on a hypothetical situation, Mr. Speaker, where parliamentary service is being owed and the deputy minority whip is driving his Prado along Moy Avenue, and somebody who is supplying this water to the Senate has not been paid. Professor Nixon Sifuna, in his ruling, advises that you freeze and seize that vehicle and auction. I don't know what happens with the speakers and the president's car, but you know those ones are heavily guarded. So I want to advise Kenyans who have some funny ideas, they should only go for these small vehicles of Deputy Chief Whip, Mr. Speaker, because you are sure you can hold on until you repay, Mr. Speaker. But on you as another senior government, it's hard. Mr. Speaker, the point I'm trying to make, in conclusion, I agree with the amendment, prepare and submit to the controller budget a payment plan. Mr. Speaker, there were two circulars that were issued by Minister of Treasury. And the law is very clear, Article 219, all money that has been appropriated should be released without undue regard, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under the law, the first charge is pending bill, Mr. Speaker. I agree that Senator Kajwang is coming up to ensure when we release, because, for example, Nandi, Mr. Speaker, since August 2023 to 17 April 2024, Nandi has received 5.4 billion 8 Kenya shillings. And many of those money has been used to pay some of the pending bills, which no one can account for. When you go to my county, the governor calls MCS and tells them Nandi has a pending bill of 850 million. When our brother Senator Ledamba brought a pending bill reschedule, we are being told 305 million, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask the OAG and COB to give the country the true status and account of the pending bill in the Republic. Point number 2, the controller budget takes into consideration efforts made by county government to clear inherited pending bills, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, imagine if you did a road in 2013 of 1.5 million. The floods are ravaging the nation. There is a road supervisor. There is a certificate that you have to raise, Mr. Speaker. How will you be able to verify such a road? We must, as a country, Mr. Speaker, and I want to agree by the proposal that when a procurement plan, Mr. Speaker, as a House, I want to advise my chair, Senator Kajwang, to come up with a law that before county governments or an entity, including national, including Parliamentary Service Commission, before they look for service and goods, they must have money. And before they develop their procurement plan, Mr. Speaker, to caution Kenyans who are suffering daily because of the loans that they have taken, Mr. Speaker. The final amendment, county government's consultation with controller budget to provide a budget for completion of all existing projects, and that initiation of new projects cease until completion of existing projects. Mr. Speaker, this speaks to what, and my chair is aware of this, that, for example, in Nandi, we have over 500 projects that one has only been complete an ECD. You saw the Kabiet, Nandi Creameries in Kabiet is yet to be complete. You saw Kapsabet New Mother and Baby is yet to be complete. You saw at Kapsengere Dispensary Hospital yet to be complete. You saw at Kobuja Health Center yet to be complete. You saw at Chepterwa Nyayo Ward yet to be complete. And I'm just mentioning a few projects, Mr. Speaker. You saw Rivertex in Mosoriat yet to be complete. You saw about the one in Tindre, the coffee milling machines, yet to be complete. Mr. Speaker, on this one of projects, I agree that if it comes to Nandi and any other county, let those projects be completed, because those projects are and for the benefit of the people of Machakos. It does not benefit the governor in office at the moment, Mr. Speaker. So I agree with my chair on this amendment, and I hope we can be able to track Narok among other places, Mr. Speaker. And the governor of Narok appeared the other day, and we were able, Mr. Speaker, to ask him a few questions on how those projects have been implemented, including roads, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the best amendments, and if there is a good job that has been done by Senator Kajwang in the history I've known in the floor of this House, thinking member of the society should support. I thank you.
Now, honorable senators, this motion is being moved, debated, and a vote taken on it had 15 minutes. We have already overshot the runway, and therefore I will proceed. I will call upon the mover to reply. Let's stick to our standing orders, honorable senators.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, and I also beg to invoke Standing Order 66.3 to defer putting of the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Indeed, the putting of the question on this motion is deferred. We will now go back to the order on maternal, newborn, and child health bill. Call that order, clerk.
Order number 9, the maternal, newborn, and child health bill, Senate Bills number 17 of 2023, second reading, resumption of debate.
The Honorable Senator Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I had a balance of a few minutes.
13 minutes.
13. So I'll just spend like maybe 5 or so to just say that, Mr. Speaker, this bill establishes a proper system for care of newborns and women who have just given birth. Mr. Speaker, in this country, we have never legislated on issues that pertain to our women, to the detail that this bill has sought to do. And yet, Mr. Speaker, our women are the ones who bear the brunt of most economic activities. Mr. Speaker, I came to learn that even when the governors and the members of parliament are giving CDF forms to fill, it is our women who are on those lines, Mr. Speaker, the queues that make the lines for getting those forms done because of their children. But, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to legislation, we have sort of put them behind, Mr. Speaker.
And so I want to take this opportunity to just thank the Honorable Beatrice for this job that she has done. Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and one of the reasons I support this bill is because, Mr. Speaker, it has given a clear way in which to deal even with the mental issues, postpartum care that is required when our women have gone through the process of childbirth. Mr. Speaker, in our custom amongst the Pokomo people, there used to be, and nowadays it is slowly disappearing, but there used to be a proper way to look after mothers who are about to give birth and immediately after they give birth. Mr. Speaker, we used to have those who we call hakabis. And Mr. Speaker, a woman who was about to give birth, they would be taken care of by older women who come and they station themselves with an expectant mother. And they are given proper care. They are given special food. They are given massage. They are taken care of in every possible way so that the baby can come out safely. And even after the baby comes out, Mr. Speaker, the woman is also supported because, again, they are taken care of physically by these older women who have gone through the experiences. And Mr. Speaker, after a period of 30 days, when you come to meet your wife, after they are in that ceremony of coming out, she looks extremely beautiful and different from even before she gave birth. And Mr. Speaker, that kind of support is no longer there. In the modern world we live in here, in Nairobi, in Mombasa, in the towns that we are creating, Mr. Speaker, traditional support systems don't exist anymore. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is in response to the reality that is on the ground. We no longer have traditional support methods for our mothers who have given birth. Then what do you have? You have women who undergo postpartum depression. You have women who even are suicidal, women who do not know how to take care of their children who they have just given birth. And there's no mechanism for support as we used to have them traditionally. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill is a very good attempt at supporting our women, and I thank the Honorable Senator Beatrice for what she has done. And Mr. Speaker, I urge all the senators who will speak to the issues to support this bill, and if possible, if there are amendments that you've thought about, please bring them. But this bill, we must make it pass as soon as we can. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support.
Senator Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this bill for maternal health care. Mr. Speaker, mothers go through a lot, and especially after they've delivered. They've lost a lot of blood. That is when they seriously need a lot of care so that they can be able to recover from what they have lost, and they continue to breastfeed their babies. They are also losing. They are feeding, but they are feeding for 2 people. Mr. Speaker, this bill is very timely. It's a high time we continue now thinking about mothers, just like Senator Mungatana has said, like how the women of before used to be looked at after they've delivered, because there could be even a cow slaughtered for them to be fed properly, and a lot of wheat meals and many other things so that they can recover from the loss, because when they are pregnant, they are feeding 2, and after they've delivered, they lose a lot. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's important. This bill is very important, and I support. Thank you.
Senator Gloria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to a very important bill, a bill that is going to touch on the lives of women, a bill that has never been legislated. We have never really legislated on any matters that touch on women, Mr. Speaker, and that is why I am really eager to push that we see this to fruition, Mr. Speaker. I understand, or I get the feeling from the floor of the House, that some of our male colleagues may not understand what maternal health care is, Mr. Speaker. For avoidance of doubt, so that we don't have some senators like my mentor, Senator Halwale, telling me that it still touches on men, maternal health care is actually the health of a woman while she's pregnant, when she gives birth, and after she gives birth. Mr. Speaker, so unless there is a man in the House who has given birth, maternal health care is literally touching on the lives of women and women only, Mr. Speaker. The reason I want to say this is because there is some laxity that is taken when we are legislating around the lives of women, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very happy that Senator Beatrice has actually taken her time to articulate the issues which many men might not know that women undergo through this period of pregnancy, giving birth, and after they give birth, Mr. Speaker. Most of the husbands and spouses who sit here, all they can tell you is that when my wife is pregnant, she has mood swings, and to Limpelek, we took her to hospital, she gave birth, and then they will tell you, Mr. Speaker, that maybe we are giving her 3 weeks to recover and everything will go back to normal. That is probably what most of the men know. They don't know, Mr. Speaker, that when a woman is carrying life, Mr. Speaker, when a woman is carrying a human being in their body, in their stomachs, there's so much that goes on, Mr. Speaker. And you cannot bungle it together and just call it healthcare, and just call it a matter of whether you're sick or you're not sick. It is a special kind of condition. So to have a bill that caters for this special kind of condition, first of all, is the acknowledgement that only women can give birth, and only women can bring forth life. And so therefore, we need a specific piece of legislation that touches on this very important act of nature, which otherwise would, if it didn't happen, Mr. Speaker, it would be the end of humanity, Mr. Speaker. Having said that, maybe it is important to point out that most of the deaths that we have, infant deaths and also deaths of women when they are giving birth, are attributed to lack of the skills during this period of pregnancy, giving birth, and afterwards, Mr. Speaker. You will find that we have access to skilled birth attendants has improved from 62 to 70%, but that doesn't mean much, Mr. Speaker. It only means that at least the Kenya Kwanza government has actually pushed to have our community health promoters, who are otherwise known as, I forget the word, but the women who are in the village who assist other women to give birth, Mr. Speaker. Right now, the Kenya Kwanza government has actually pushed that these community health promoters are equipped with the right equipment, such as if it's razor blades, if it's just basic things such as thermometers to check on temperatures, and equipment that they can use in the village at the point where the woman is unable to reach a health facility, Mr. Speaker. 80% of the maternal deaths are attributed to poor quality of care, Mr. Speaker. We have brought, I think, 4 statements at the floor of the House that are touching on the deaths of either newborn babies or women who have gone to hospital to give birth and unfortunately did not make it out, Mr. Speaker. Those statements have been handled by the Committee on Health. But, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the reports that have been tabled, one was actually tabled to me on a lady from Dagoretti North who passed away while she was giving birth. When you look at the reports, you will see that the reports indicate clearly the access to skilled labor was a problem. The second thing is that issues that should be brought up as red flags in terms of this period of giving birth were actually ignored. And most importantly, the women do not have access to these particular healthcare centers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, I know that some of the members of the House might not see this as an important bill, or maybe they thought we should push on other pieces of legislation. But Mr. Speaker, let me point this out. In this House already, within the 20-something months that we've here, we have had many senators who have actually given birth. Mr. I'm privileged to have a medical cover here. The kind of policy that I have as a woman is not the same policy that, let's say, Senator Cherargei will have, Mr. Speaker. I will be covered on issues to do with sexual reproductive health rights to an extent that I could have like maybe 6 or 7 checkups and things like that. And that is what Linda Mama was trying to provide, but from a public space, Mr. Speaker. So even as we legislate on maternal health care, maybe I would caucus with Senator Beatrice and all the other women legislators and see how we can revive, or how we can convince and persuade our health minister to perhaps table something in cabinet to ensure that women are actually taken care of, as I said, in the manner with which we require, especially for those who are pregnant, are about to give birth, and after they give birth, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to belabor the point on how we as women are special, Mr. Speaker, but let me end by saying this, Mr. Speaker. I do believe that each and every single person in the House here was actually brought on this earth by a woman, Mr. Speaker. So as we are deliberating on these issues, let it not be that these issues are issues that only touch on women. These are issues that touch on your families. It's actually the center of continuity of humanity. And so when we discuss on things that might seem irrelevant, like I have seen some of the proposals on what it will look like on county level, how we have to have the policies on county level, how we have to have healthcare centers that have the minimum on ABCD in terms of childbirth and taking care of our infant babies who might not be born in good health. Mr. Speaker, I just want to urge the senators to understand that this is a matter that touches on each and every one of us, and maybe the importance of this maternal health care bill should be stressed. And I do hope that when it comes to the floor of the House, I know that I don't have a vote, Mr. Speaker, but I do hope that I'll be able to rally that all the members will support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this very important bill by my good friend, Senator Beatrice Ogola, the Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health Bill. Mr. Speaker, I've perused through the bill, and although I'm particularly impressed with the thought in terms of policy, in terms of responsibilities, Mr. Speaker, one thing that we forget, and this is what I was mentioning to my sister, is that today in this country, our doctors are on strike. And we're here legislating to be able to care for those children. Mr. Speaker, hypothetically, suppose there's a child out there who needs what exactly we are proposing here, but cannot be given because we have failed to be able to bring proper negotiations on the table and putting those children ahead. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, when I read all our proposals, I think we miss the boat. A lot of them are futuristic, although I support futures works. And I'm particularly happy with Senator Ogola having even cared for future mothers. This is something which most people don't even consider it. You're only thinking about today, but you're not thinking about tomorrow. There are three very, very important things in this bill which I hope to demystify. Briefly, there's the issue of maternal. That is something which is separate. There's the issue of a newborn. And then the third part is the issue of the child health. Mr. Speaker, what Senator Beatrice Ogola has done, she has taken the mother, proposed measures to ensure that that mother, whether she's sane, because in most cases, Mr. Speaker, when you go through our streets, you'll find a pregnant street woman. You know, sometimes you'll see a mad woman who is pregnant. I just want to say thank you, my dear sister, for thinking about every member of this society. We are all here today courtesy of children who are born, our electorates, people who voted for us to be in this house, to be able to think about other future generations. So it is imperative that the first thing, and this is the first thing that I want to request my sister to do, is where she's talking about providing a proper healthcare, I think number 8, where she says, every healthcare provider shall provide a child from the time of birth to age 12. The following, she goes into comprehensive newborn care, including postnatal follow-up as may be prescribed. Number 2, she says, health services that ensure child survival growth. Mr. Speaker, I want to persuade my dear sister to allow us to amend that section to make sure that that child who is born is attached to the mother's insurance policy until that child is 1 year old. In our culture, Mr. Speaker, the Maasai, and I'm happy to see that in this bill, it takes into consideration different cultures, background. That is actually very good, because we should never forget that we come from somewhere. In our culture, when a child is born, when the umbilical cord has been cut, you are told, hold your life, and I hold my life. That is the way all of us, in fact, in Maasai, say, my bonga like. Mr. Speaker, today, because of the many challenges that we have created for ourselves, our healthcare is in a dilapidated state. The only way that we can ensure that, one, that mother, and I said I will divide this bill into 3 sections as I debate, as I try to persuade my dear brothers and sisters, honorable senators, to fully support this, is that that mother needs care. You know, this bill talks about future mothers. I love that. This bill talks about pregnant mothers. I love that. This bill talks about mothers after delivering. But what I want to do is now to say, let us combine them such that the care that we are seeking to be able to provide for these mothers, those, because they are intertwined, the mother and the child maintain the same policy. If today any of our citizens go to the hospital and delivers, up to the time you deliver, your policy covers both you and the unborn child. The moment the child has been put on the table, you are now asked by the hospital to provide a medical cover for that child. Who knows if that child is going to be able to survive for 30 days, for 90 days? So I want to propose that we now become future-centric and we amend insurance policies, Insurance Act, so that it covers that child and that mother for 1 full year, until the time when that child can be able to survive. We lose a lot of children. One, because either the mother cannot afford to pay for her own insurance policy and also pay for the child. Mr. Speaker, there's only one section that I'm not very sure of, and I want my sister to be able to elaborate this further. Still on the section 8, where it says in her bill, she says, I'll read 2 and 3, where the child under subsection 1, and subsection 1 talks about the issues that I've been trying to explain on the care that is supposed to be given to the child and the mother, is severely malnutrition, malformed at the time of birth, the healthcare provider may refer the child to a relevant medical practitioner for comprehensive assessment, diagnostic, and treatment. And then further it says, a healthcare provider shall not, and the word here shall not, provide healthcare services to the child under subsection 1 unless the healthcare provider has obtained consent from the parent or the guardian of the child. Mr. Speaker, I see that as a bit contradictory, because here we are saying, let us provide that child with the best care. But then when you are putting it into a condition where it depends on the mother to say, provide my child with care, and if you don't do that, that child is not treated, we are actually going to cause a lot of problems. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to persuade my sister to delete that section and to ensure that everything that we are saying here, that we are talking about making sure that we are providing our mothers and children with the best cover, is to ensure that the state takes responsibility. It takes responsibility of that child until that child is 1 year old. You know, in future, we might actually say until that child is emancipated. You know, and that time you're looking at about 18, 19 years old. But because we are realistic on the state of our finances as a country, I think there's nothing bad in amending Insurance Act and ensuring that that child and that mother are together for 1 full year. Let my policy covers. Mr. Speaker, I've noted that in this bill, the Cabinet Secretary has been given a lot of responsibilities. I dare say the reason why we are having a lot of problems today in this country, particularly because of this issue of the strike by the doctors, is because although our function has been fully devolved, you know, level 1 to level 5, we are still relying so much on bureaucracies of a Cabinet Secretary. I think it's about time, and this House must now ask serious questions. Are we really ready to deal with the issue of devolution? Are we? You know, we should always say, we always keep on saying, form follows functions. You know, even in this bill it says that county government shall provide money for the maternal, newborn, and the child health programs. Should we now be saying that we cost, how much it will cost per child to be protected, to be provided with services, and this House allocate that money? When we allocate that money, we deduct from the money that is being allocated to the Ministry of Health. If today, Mr. Speaker, you take the budget of the Ministry of Health, you'll be shocked. It is almost equivalent to almost 30 counties, allocation to almost 30 counties. And what do? Just a bunch of policies, keep on talking, running up and down. They cannot even sit down and agree with the doctors. The person who is running that docket is completely incompetent, cannot even be able to sit down and have a discussion on issues that are affecting Kenyans. So let us not have double standard, Mr. Speaker. If we are here, and we are here because of the interest of our people, we must then be able to legislate, knowing clearly the consequences and the non-intended consequences. Mr. Speaker, I know a lot of my colleagues want to contribute to this. I want to persuade my sister to relook at this bill, because I just really perused it a lot. And I realized that there are a lot of responsibilities that have been given to the Cabinet Secretary on this issue of health. And in the same bill, it talks about us respecting our cultures. Because our county governments have been divided based on, more say, cultures, or tribal groups and affiliations, apart from this business of nowadays where we say a county is cosmopolitan, just because of interest. I think we need to give more responsibilities to county governments. And we should literally start by allocating more money. the big problems we have in county governments today, Mr. Speaker, is being brought by the duplication of functions. Where the national government says, oh, let's come here within 48 hours or maybe within, let's say, a fortnight. We have passed a legislation on community health workers. And then, without actually thinking, when the national government goes there, the president say, we were going to pay these community health workers 50%. Now county governments also put 50%. County governors, they go, boom, they take the money without looking at the entire budget. We need to cost. We have institutions in this country that can be able to help us cost these services. We have KIPRA, we have the Commission of Revenue Allocation. These are independent bodies. And then once it is brought here, before we even vote, the first thing that each one of us should be reminded is that we are just a conveyor belt. You know, for us, we are moving. We are not going to live in this world forever. We'll be here today. We convey certain information. We help the community for future. It is about time that we start looking at everything, Mr. Speaker, being future-centric. You know, the United Nations talked about the SDGs. And in this country, the former president and the prime minister then, I think, came up with Vision 2030. And that Vision 2030, Mr. Speaker, I think has already been forgotten. Other countries are now saying Vision 2050. I think it's about time that all of us look at all that we want for this country and become realistic. And we move each and every function that has been devolved. We make sure that everyone who has got a fiduciary duty or responsibility, remember that they will not live in this world forever. Right now, all our hospitals are closed. Don't let anybody lie to you that hospitals are open. It is only us, the rich, who can be able to afford hospitals. Because when we fall sick here, no one gives a hoot in hell about the strike of the doctors. We'll get on a plane, first class, business class ticket, go to Dubai for treatment. But the people who have brought us here, what do? They wallow in poverty, they die. I think it's about time that we rethink seriously. And as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I fully support this bill. And I want my sister. Point of order. So there's a point of order.
Senator Eddy, what is your point of order?
Oh, you want me to use that one?
Mr. Speaker, I'm rising on a polite point of order. 101-4. My senior Senator Ledama, who is also my leader in the House, has talked about something that is very serious. And matters of healthcare are not easy to joke with. But I think that, I know it's very emotive, but it's not in order for him to impute that all these members of Parliament, when they are sick, they will go to London or Lisbon or to the US. I think there are a few who might be very privileged, and I don't want to assume that he's one of them, because I know he's a very humble man. I know Senator Boni Alwale prefers being treated in Malaysia, not in Lisbon. And I know that Senator Kajuang really loves being treated in Homa Bay. And I know that Senator Eddie Okech really prefers Migori hospitals. And I know that Senator Beatrice also likes being treated in Godquero, somewhere in Migori. Senator Amida was sick the other day, and I saw her very keen being treated in Kenyatta. So I think that maybe he wanted to talk about the executive, because the executive might have more affinity to going outside the country, but not these esteemed members of parliament. So I beg through your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, that he withdraws that inference, that perhaps we might want to board planes and go very far. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama Olekina, to the extent that you've made reference to the item on quote-unquote colleague senators and also matters on items which are not a subject of this bill, you out of order?
Mr. Speaker.
To the extent that has been raised by Senator Edi.
Mr. Speaker, I think the best thing would have been to ask me whether I'm in order or I'm out of order. But I stand firmly with my position that we are hypocrites. Because when we fall sick, our policy can cater for us for up to 45 days outside this country. We have a commissioner here, and she can attest to that. So let us stop being hypocrites. Let us call a spade a spade. Right now, we are here when the doctors were out on the gate. We couldn't go. You know, we couldn't go. All of us could not go. I have attended it severally. A few of us have attended. But if we really care about the future of this country, we would have called off the sittings and we moved out to receive that petition. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, because this point of order by my very good friend, Senator Eddie Okech, is frivolous. You know,
Senator Olekina, remember the chair has ruled. And to that extent, the Speaker did indicate that to the extent of the point of order that had been raised, you out of order. And therefore, Senator Okech, I'll not allow you to interrupt this. I want you to conclude by limiting yourself to what is relevant to this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am very happy, and I'm happy to be informed by my brother, the Chief Whip. Please inform me.
Thank you. Senator Halwale.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The senator for Narok for his stand on the plight of patients and doctors in this country. I would like to inform him that only this afternoon I rose on a point of order to draw the attention of the chair on what was going on outside, and he responded, and the chair of the health committee went and officially received the memorandum, which is now commendable. And through this information, Mr. Speaker, may I further appeal to the Speaker that those doctors standing out there, they are telling us that they recognize us as the only institution, constitutional, that is mandated to represent them as voters. And therefore, the Speaker should move further, table that memorandum in this House, because we have been waiting for a way in which the grievances of the doctors could come to the House. Now it has come through the committee, Mr. Speaker.
I think your information is made,
concluding. It can come so that we discuss it. Mr. Speaker, we want doctors to go back to the wards to treat the patients. We are tired of buying coffins and attending funerals for preventable deaths, Mr. Speaker. I speak this as the Chief Whip of the government, and I know that the President of the Republic of Kenya does not want a single person to die. He wants doctors to be in the hospital. If the problem is the minister, fix it. If the problem is the PS, fix it. If the problem is money, Parliament is there. Let's vote for it. Doctors must be paid. Patients should stop dying like chicken, Mr. Speaker. I thank
Senator Halwale, conclude. Senator Lekina, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me appreciate the Chief Whip for informing me. I'm fully informed, and I was seated right here when he actually called the attention of the Speaker on the issue of the doctors. To that I say, Congole. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, because my time has really been interfered with, please give me 1 minute, I finish. Because just add me 1 more minute.
Conclude, Senator
Let me
Olekina.
conclude, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to end by saying this. I fully support this bill. And I hope as I support this bill, my dear sister will actually come to our Committee on Health so that when we are looking at this bill, we can be able to incorporate at the Committee of the Whole a few amendments that can be able to make this bill actually function. Because as it is, there are a lot of things that don't take care of this generation. They are very good, they take care of the future generation, which I support. But we need to really think about our priorities in this country. Health should be our number one priority, Mr. Speaker. The challenges we have today. In fact, they'll even be made worse because we seem to have missed our priorities, even on this issue of the floods. There'll be so many people who will suffer from cholera, and a lot of them will be either newborn babies, mothers, and all of us. So let us be serious for once. And we all sit down together and say, enough is enough. Let us care for this country. Let us build for the future generation.
Senator Olekina, your time is up. The microphone is taken. Senator Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I also rise to support this bill, and I want to congratulate Senator Ugola for coming up with such a beautiful bill. I'm surprised to see Senator Gloria saying that elderly women like me do not support this bill. Actually, the elderly, they are the ones who are going to support this bill very, very keenly, because, as we know, we are talking of the future mothers who are our children, and who...
What's your point of order, Senator Olekina?
Mr. Speaker, is the Deputy Majority Leader in order to refer to herself as an elderly woman when we know that she's still a very young lady, very active, and a distinguished senator?
Senator Ledama.
Seriously, she's not.
Resume your seat. Senator Ledama, resume your seat. Senator Keroche, for your information, she made reference to an earlier contribution by a member. And of course, as a matter of fact, she's disputing that fact. And so
Yes,
proceed, Senator
thank you.
Keroche.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, I think we, or the women, are the ones who are supporting this, this bill, because what we are talking of, the future mothers, they are our children and our sons. And we know very well that currently, as we speak, the way the economy is, most of us, the mothers, are the ones taking care of our children, even when they get married and even when they are marrying. So meaning those children, when we come to saying that they be given the free maternal and on the newborn child and the child health, it's a relief for the mothers, because now their children, the future mothers, will get catered for. I remember during our time, that was what is happening in the hospitals. If you walked in the hospital when you are pregnant, you could get all these free things. And even during the the clinic, when you're taking your child to the clinic, there was a certain time we could get all those things free. So meaning, we will get this bill back to where we came from, we will really be celebrating this country. And you know, the future of every child depends on how he was taken care of, especially his health, in the early ages. So I support this bill, I had promised that I will not take a lot of time because I know most of us, we want to contribute in this bill, but I really want to say that we really support this bill. And we will continue praying so that this bill can be approved and become materialized so that our children, the future mothers, can benefit from this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Karoche. Senator Moses Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to proudly support this bill by Senator Beatrice Ogolla. For the record, this is a third bill that has been sponsored by a member of the Homa Bay delegation in this 13th Parliament. Senator Beatrice Ogolla has brought the maternal newborn child health bill. Senator Moses Kajwang brought to the House the vocational and technical training bill and also the county boundaries bill. And Mr. Speaker, you will realize that the bills that have been sponsored by our female colleagues are the bills that touch on the core socio-economic issues in this republic. And I think that's why this House would be better off with more women, not necessarily more men. If you look at the bills that have highlighted, Mr. Speaker, the bills that have sponsored, they are really hardware kind of bills or a conflict kind of bills. But this bill by Senator Beatrice Ogolla is a bill that touches on the core things that a nation should be, and that is about the children, that is about the women, and that is about the reproductive rights. Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, when you think about maternal health, child health, we must ask ourselves how Kenya performs against global standards. The Sustainable Development Goals have put a target that under 5 child mortality should not exceed 21 children out of 1,000 live births. In Kenya, in the year 2022, Kenya had double that number. We are doing badly. 41 children out of 1,000 births die under the age of 5. And the global average is 38. And so, in as much as we have reported progress in certain parts of this republic, when Senator Roba was in Mandera, the interventions that he was able to undertake using devolved funds improved child mortality, improved maternal mortality, but it is still below the global standard, and it is still double the SDG which we all aspire to achieve. Mr. Speaker, in Article 43 of our Constitution, we have the economic and social rights. And part of that is that every person has a right to the highest attainable standards of health. And Senator Beatrice Ogolla has put it in her bill that every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of maternal, newborn, and child health services. Mr. Speaker, this bill by Senator Beatrice Ogolla gives effect to Article 43 of the Constitution of Kenya, and I think that it is an extremely important initiative. Mr. Speaker, I was looking at a report by the Institute of Economic Affairs, and they are saying that preventable childhood deaths are unacceptable, and I do agree with them. Many of us as parents, whether it is direct or through proxy as a guardian, an uncle, an auntie, you know the pain of losing a child, and we should not visit that upon our people. And whereas the outcomes have improved along the tarmac, because this is a country of inequality, this is a country of iniquity, where those who are better off always find themselves next to a tarmac, or find themselves next to an electricity pole, or in the past, a telephone line. Away from the tarmac, many people are losing children under the age of 5. And whereas we are talking of 41 out of 1,000 births, Mr. Speaker, you might find that perhaps in certain parts of northern Kenya, eastern Kenya, southern Kenya, the number could be much higher. This bill, if well implemented, and if it has enforceable provisions, should ensure that children do not die out of preventable reasons. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, we have the malaria problem. And many of us have suffered malaria, repeated bouts of malaria growing up. And it's just by the grace of God that we are still alive, and also because perhaps we are close to certain facilities and we could get medication. So, Speaker, malaria is still a leading killer of children under the age of 5. And unfortunately, the national government does not have its own budget for malaria. Malaria support in this country comes from donors. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to speculate because many people have said that the national government does not care about malaria because it is a disease for the tropics around the Lake Victoria. It is a disease for the people around the coast. It is not a disease for the highlands. I want to refuse to agree with that characterization because I do not want to imagine that we have had governments that have decided that let the people who lie in opposition areas die of malaria. But the fact that the national government tends not to have its own line budget, relying mostly on the presidential fund from the United States and millennium support and funds from multilateral and bilateral sources, tells you that sometimes the government is insensitive. And malaria, if it hits me today, Mr. Speaker, I could survive. But if it hit a child under the age of 5, the results could be different. Immunization access, Mr. Speaker. We must ask ourselves, to what extent has the national government devolved this to county governments? Immunization and its politics is almost similar to the politics of fertilizer. Mr. Speaker, if one day we will do an inquiry to find out whether we are giving our children immunes or immunity-boosting products or water or placebo, I am sure that a country that can give farmers sand and soil and things that cannot generate productivity, you will be surprised one day to find that we are injecting our children with water and placebo. I do not want that to be the case. And in fact, I hope that I will never be proven right. But, Mr. Speaker, if our morals are to the point where we can fool farmers, where we can give them seed that cannot germinate, where we can give them fertilizer that is not fertilizer knowing full well that it is stone and sand, do you think, Mr. Speaker, if you have sunk to that low in terms of a moral compass, do you think that something would prevent us from giving our children water and placebo and things that are not useful? I hope that that will never be the case. And I hope that this bill by Senator Beatrice Ogola will make sure that those immunization services which are part of child health and newborn health are properly transferred to county governments, and that county governments must be compelled to provide proper budgetary allocations for those kind of services. Of course, I know the national government tends to want to do the procurement, the big procurement for the immunes or for the vaccines. We saw that during the COVID outbreak. But, Mr. Speaker, we must confirm that the vaccines that our children are consuming is not water, is not placebo, and it is the right thing. When it comes to the health of mothers, Mr. Speaker, the Linda Mama program that was initiated in 2013 was perhaps one of the good things that came out of the Uhuru administration. And I think that we must give credit where it's due. Launched in 2013, the objective of Linda Mama was to enhance or to broaden access to maternal health support services. And, Mr. Speaker, the statistics show that as a result of Linda Mama, more women are giving birth in skilled care facilities. I can tell you that perhaps half of us here, perhaps we were born at home. I watched as my young brother was born on one Saturday morning. I was sleeping on that bed and I was woken up and told to leave the bed for my mother to give birth on the same bed. And, Mr. Speaker, that young boy who was born on that day today is a doctor. And he survived. He was delivered by a woman who did not even go to primary school. There is that indigenous knowledge. In Swahili, I think they are called wakunga. In Luo, they are called nyamrerwa. And in every other culture, I'm sure there are those skilled persons, not skilled in the modern sense, but skilled in indigenous knowledge. They know which plant to use when you have a boil. And they'll get some plants, they'll squeeze them or boil them, apply it on the boil, and, Mr. Speaker, within 2 or 3 days, that boil will burst. They know what to use for respiratory problems for children. So, Speaker, a lot of children nowadays, because of climate change and the degraded environment, are born with serious respiratory problems. Those women without schooling, without KCP or KCSE certificates, would boil some concoction in a pot and cover us, and we would be subjected to that, and it would heal. And it would not just heal, but cure those kind of problems. We saw it when COVID came, that those things that those women used to do for us back in the days became now the new norm when it came to the COVID pandemic. They would take trees like the neem tree, mwarubaine, and boil it. And as bitter as it was, Mr. Speaker, when you drank that mwarubaine, it would flush out the diseases. How do we incorporate that indigenous knowledge into our mainstream health interventions? The community health workers, Mr. Speaker, that the President launched previously, not too long ago, the program that this Senate passed a legislative framework to support. Mr. Speaker, these community health workers cannot really fit in the shoes of those traditional women, those health attendants, those midwives who are able to help my mother give birth to a doctor today. Because there's a curriculum, there's some training, there's some knowledge, you have to be trained on a few things, but we must find a way of integrating those indigenous knowledge holders within the modern structures. Mr. Speaker, even if we go to the top of the pyramid, when it comes to childcare, we know that those experts who are trained to deal with issues of children are called pediatricians. So, Speaker, pediatricians take care of children, and I would be very happy to be informed by the senator for Kakamega because he's a medical expert. Whereas gynecologists take care of the women. I'm not very sure who takes care of the men when it comes to reproductive issues. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you told me as a man to go and see a gynecologist, I would be a bit hesitant. I hope that there are gynecologists who can take care of problems that men have. But I am sure that pediatricians take care of children. If you look at the number of pediatricians in this country and compare with the number of children that we have, the ratio is completely imbalanced. And further, Mr. Speaker, we do not have a national pediatric institution. What we have in this country is Gertrude's. And Gertrude's has been around. It is a non-profit, and they provide very good services. But it cannot then have the soul, it cannot have the DNA that you need out of a national pediatric referral institution. Mr. Speaker, this House must move a motion and make a resolution that this country must have a national institution dedicated to children, a national pediatric facility. Other countries have done it. We've got Kenyatta National Referral Hospital specializing in everything and about anything, but we need to have an institution that specializes just in childcare. For example, what Gertrude's has done, but with the support from public coffers. Mr. Speaker, if someone has gone to school for 6 years, become an intern, become specialized as a pediatrician, why should we begrudge those people their salary? Why should we begrudge them their pay? Mr. Speaker, advocates today are charging 10,000 shillings for a letter because it's regulated by the remuneration orders, advocate remuneration orders. We have seen even members of this House, charging 1 billion shillings for legal services. And it is justified, and it is justifiable, as long as you are complying with the Act, and as long as you have gone through taxation. We have seen in pending bills of counties, Mr. Speaker, bills of $1 billion owing to legal professionals. And we are saying we cannot begrudge advocates their fees. They are professionals. They are regulated. Mr. Speaker, today the richest people in the world are software merchants. They are making billions out of software. Why should we feel bad when doctors are asking to be paid something that is proportional to the amount of time that they spent in school? And Mr. Speaker, we should resolve that if the government cannot find money to pay the doctors, we should be willing as members of parliament and members of county assembly to forego our earnings so that it can go to those doctors and health workers. Mr. Speaker, in some countries that we have visited, like in Cuba, a member of the Senate, being a senator is not a full-time job. Being a senator is not what you do from morning to evening, from Monday to Monday. You are either an advocate, doing your job and coming to the Senate to deliberate on matters that affect the country. You are either a doctor, like Dr. Khalwale here. That is your core profession. your core occupation. Coming to the Senate is just like going to church. Mr. Speaker, I belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We've got elders, just like Senator Manzo. He used to be an elder, and I think he did something, then he's no longer an elder. He was de-whipped from church. Senator Manzo is not a full-time elder. He does not wake up on Monday to do elder duties, on Tuesday to do elder duties, on Thursday to do elder duties. He is an advocate, a very reputed advocate. He is a businessman. Those are the things that keep him busy, that put money in his pocket, but he comes to the Senate for the love of the people of Makueni and for the love of the people of Kenya. But we have turned it the other way around, that we are first senators and we are first politicians, and then any other business is being an advocate or a doctor. I think we need to change that. Doctors have no luxury of that nature. A doctor is a doctor from morning to evening. He's on call at night. A doctor while flying on a plane, the Hippocratic oath that a doctor takes compels a doctor, if there's an emergency mid-flight, the cabin crew asks whether a doctor is there. And if you're a doctor, you must respond. A doctor is a doctor full-time. A politician, a senator can never be, that can never be our profession or occupation. Let's find other things to do, but let's come here to debate on things that affect the nation, and let's release some of those resources so that we can remunerate those who deserve to be remunerated as such. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, we have seen improvements in outcomes on HIV/AIDS in Homa Bay County, where I come from, because through Linda Mama, we have been able to prevent mother-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS. And I do hope that the Cabinet Secretary, and I do hope that this current government, their policies around health does not include dismantling Linda Mama. It should be about improving it, doing studies on the weaknesses and gaps, and making sure that we do it better. Because access to high-quality maternal, newborn, and child health services is a constitutional right for all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, even in the US, the debate now, beside immigration, beside economy, beside Israel, beside China, is now on Roe versus Wade, the decision by the Supreme Court on the issue of abortion. In the 11th Parliament, the then Senator Sijeny brought a bill to this House, which the House rejected. But the bill was important because it was talking about reproductive rights and reproductive health. Let us not be afraid to insist on high-quality reproductive health services to our children and adolescents. And Senator Beatrice Ogola has addressed that in this particular bill. Mr. Speaker, I support, and I will continue sharing with Senator Beatrice Ogola on how we can ensure that the roles of national and roles of county governments are distinct, and for delivery of health services, and for these responsibilities on the county governments. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Samson Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, from the onset, I want to congratulate my committee member colleague, the specially elected Senator Beatrice Ogola from Homa Bay delegation. Mr. Speaker, it's rare to see commandeering between delegations like Senator Kajwang and Senator Beatrice Ogola. But of course, anybody who would not want to be friendly with Senator Beatrice.
Senator Cherargei, did you say commandeering?
No, how can, yes.
Say
it depends. It depends.
Withdraw the earlier statement, then say it appropriately.
Yes. What do you mean small English? The warm and hospitable relationship.
It is called camaraderie.
Oh yes, yes. Mr. Speaker, I want to remain relevant to the debate of the House. I don't know why Senator AD is excited. Anyway, he's normally excited when I'm speaking. But I'm impressed by the relationship that they have, professional relationship. It's rare. I've seen a number of delegations here fighting even. Mr. Speaker, even your former senator, there were so many letters that were flying around, even to allow to vote. And I know Senator Kajwang understands what we went through in the last session. Mr. Speaker, Senator Beatrice Ogola continues to distinguish herself as a he for she and she for he in this House. Mr. Speaker, I've had a misnomer to try and paint us good sons and gentlemen of Africa to behave as if we don't support he for she and she for he. I want to put the record straight that anything that allows our society to flourish, to grow. And Mr. Speaker, I see people saying it is important, even as men, we need to be taken care of. Because, Mr. Speaker, under Article 26, life begins at conception, Mr. Speaker. You need also a man who is well-fed, well-kept, so that you get quality seeds, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Speaker, you get the quality at the conception, Mr. Speaker. Because also you don't want to have men who are shooting blanks, Mr. Speaker. We want men who are shooting live bullets, in quotes, Mr. Speaker, to make, because I have heard women saying, women senators, some of them saying here, Mr. Speaker, that, that men don't care about women. We care, but how will you get pregnant without men who can shoot live bullets, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that you get pregnant? So men also, and I know men, the other day we fired our chair, who was Stephen Leto. We have given Chairman Oparanya, the former governor, to be the chair of men's conference, so that some of these issues we can highlight during men's conference, Mr. Speaker. The point I'm trying to make, Mr. Speaker, this is a conversation that we cannot, Mr. Speaker, this is a conversation we cannot have in isolation. It is about also a third gender rule. Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon my colleague, female or women senators, that let us have a conversation where we rally men and women together, so that we work. We want a father who is loving. Under Article 53, Mr. Speaker, it talks about parental care. When you look at the Children Act of 2022, Mr. Speaker, number 29 of 2022, the Children's Act. And I was lucky to be taught the children and the law by my good brother and my mentor, Professor Wabwile, Mr. Speaker, who taught us about the children law, Mr. Speaker. So we need men and women, we need fathers and mothers. Because when a child is born, the Constitution talks about Article 53, the parental care. So the man only, we should stop this misnomer that the business of a man ends after, Mr. Speaker, after impregnating a woman. We should also know, Mr. Speaker, the role of the father continues beyond the pregnancy. You know, I saw somebody saying, Mr. Speaker, that men only come in, that they saw their wives or women getting pregnant, then they are being told a child is born. That is not true. Mr. Speaker, there are many men in this city and across the country who are going with their women to antenatal clinics, Mr. Speaker, who are taking them, who are even taking care of the children, Mr. Speaker. So this is a conversation that involves everyone, Mr. Speaker. We must appreciate the fact that women play a critical role. Mr. Speaker, we have been told, according to research, that even children who do not have a father figure end up with some weird behaviors. We have been told on several occasions, Mr. Speaker, because the father figure is an authority. And that is why the drafters of the Constitution, I'm not casting aspersion, Mr. Speaker, on single parents.